COVID-19 affected my life a lot because I used to go around every weekend to give talks about math in different cities all around the world. I'm a mathematician and I work on education. So I liked going to meet students to help people be more interested in math. But when COVID-19 came, it was not possible to go to events. So I immediately noticed that. And then my city said that everyone had to stay at home. And I'm also a mathematician. And so I did the calculation of how long would we need to stay at home if we wanted to stay at home to stop the spread of the virus. And I calculated that we might need to stay at home for almost 1 year, which would not work because then nobody would have a job. And that's when I realized I really had to do something. I also happened a long time ago when I got my PhD to be supported for my PhD by a group called the Hertz Foundation. And the Hertz Foundation provides a free PhD to 15 of the top students in the United States in exchange for signing an agreement that if there is ever a moment of national emergency, you'll come in to help. And I'm one of these people. So we got activated in the middle of March. There was a message that went out to this group and it explained how bad the COVID-19 was. And when I saw this, I realized that I needed to do something. The biggest mathematical observation in this app is that COVID-19 spreads through a network of relationships. And so if there's a way to anonymously collect this whole network, so we don't know who is who or who lives where, then you would be able to use mathematics to model the expansion of the infection through the network. And if you saw that there was some infection over here, which was going to here a day later and here a day later. When I say here, I don't mean a state or a city. I mean that every dot is a person. And if there are two dots connected by a line, those people have spent at least 15 minutes close to each other. If you see it spreading, then you would want to tell all the people over here who are 1 week away, you'd want to tell them that there's a big tsunami, a big wave coming towards them so that they could shelter in place. Of course, in order to do this with math, you need to be able to analyze networks. And you need to be able to find a good way for computers to be able to store this huge network and to make conclusions. That's one way. Another simple way that, well, maybe not so simple, another way that math is also involved is because the way that Novid detects whether people are nearby is by using sound. We use ultrasound, not only the Bluetooth that you have heard Google or Apple or other people using. The reason we added sound also is because it's well known that the Bluetooth method has false positives because Bluetooth can go through walls and go through ceilings. And so you might accidentally detect someone living in the apartment upstairs from you, even though you never actually met them ever. What we do is we use sound waves. We ask, as these two phones are near each other, we ask one phone to make a sound to the other phone. And then we find out whether we detect the sound. But in order to do this detection in a noisy place, we actually have to use some mathematics called Fourier analysis to go and analyze whether a specific frequency was played. This is about trigonometry. Actually, the fact that Novid was the first anonymous contact tracing app released in the United States and currently is still the only one, and the fact that it also has this higher level of accuracy than all other proposed projects shows that that's the value mathematics can bring. Mathematics is about analyzing the world from the very first principles and thinking about whether or not you can use the patterns of nature to go farther than what we could just do by putting some pieces together. So in particular, there were some major insights that mathematics provided. The first was that having this network of collecting this network anonymously would still have enormous value even when it's anonymous. Because you could imagine sometime in the future, there being a big control room where you're not controlling people, but you're deciding on what kinds of messages to send to people who might soon be infected. This would actually be a global response to COVID-19. And that insight that you can do this still anonymously is a mathematical insight. But even the idea of using sound to go and find out how far away different devices are It sounds simple at first. You just make a sound. But if you actually want to make it work, even when there are cats meowing and when there are people playing music and when there are crashes happening because it's a train ride, if you want to get all of that working, mathematics and trigonometry can help you to figure out what an actual signal is. And you can separate the signal from the noise. So effectively what math does is it lets you build completely new, more advanced solutions. There are many things we can do where we just put together previous existing tools. But sometimes what you need is a new tool. And mathematics is what lets you connect all the way down to the laws of nature and figure out what new tool you might be able to assemble. Indeed, if there is cut to the funding for science and basic mathematics, that's a bad thing for society. Because especially as we see here with the COVID-19 crisis, this is where you actually need to understand how viruses work, the mathematics of how viruses spread. All of these are fundamental, or else we will all be lost. Now, as a mathematician, whenever we see that there are cuts in budget, I think what we see that hits most directly is that it will reduce the number of people who want to go in to study basic mathematics and science. In some sense, in mathematics, you can still do mathematical research without a huge amount of budget. However, if there is not funding, then there will not be graduate students. There will not be the future people who say that they want to dedicate their entire life to trying to understand some bit of the universe. And that's a major loss. We cannot afford as a civilization to stop being curious about how the world works. Otherwise, we will only be forced to respond almost like animals do, to just say, well, something new happened, I'll just use my instincts. Unfortunately, instincts don't always work. And so my opinion is that any reduction in funding for the basic research for science and mathematics is actually only going to make us less able as a civilization to respond to future new crises. That's a really interesting question about the international exchange of education. Actually, I love international exchange of education. And in fact, not only from the perspective of working in the US and having non-US students come to learn, I also enjoy myself going to China, for example, or going to other countries to participate in this international exchange. It goes both ways. Actually, normally, every summer, I also co-organize a summer camp for students in China at Tsinghua University. That's in collaboration with S.T. Yao, a famous mathematician who happens to be based at both Harvard and Tsinghua University, in addition to other places. And so I really enjoy being able to work in multiple different areas and to work with all of the talent from the world. Actually, as the coach of the US International Math Olympiad team, which is also something else that I do, as that coach, I have the opportunity to see some of the most talented students from Europe, Asia, all other parts of the world. And when you bring these kinds of people together, it is a rich experience that helps more things to be created, if for no other reason than that every country and culture has slightly different problems that it needs to deal with. Maybe problems is the wrong word, but there are many different interests that people are working on in China that are different from the things that people work on in the US or in India. And if you really want to solve those problems, you need to have the local knowledge. And ultimately, you want to use these international education, the international education ecosystem as a way for these different experts who also understand their different local problems to come together. And then you have the best solution for everything. I really enjoy the ability to work with students that come from China and from around the world at Carnegie Mellon. And so I certainly hope that we will be able to do that again as soon as possible. This is one reason why I'm working as hard as I can to stop the spread of COVID-19, because the sooner we can return somewhat to normal, the sooner our education and research can also globalize again. I think, unfortunately, some people think that the only way to maintain some level of dominance is to exclude other groups, or to maybe say that, there are some special things that one can only learn in the United States and to prevent other people from coming in. I think that knowledge is something which these days transcends boundaries. And so I think it's a bit short-sighted for anyone to even think that they can control the spread of knowledge, especially basic knowledge. I understand that special intellectual property that a company or a government might make in its special research laboratories, those are not easily leaked, and that's probably a good thing. However, when we're talking about basic knowledge, where for me basic knowledge is even what you learn in your PhD, that's published work. It is very difficult to control the spread of that kind of basic knowledge. And furthermore, it will actually hold everyone back if you try to control the spread. So my personal opinion would be that if one wants to maintain some kind of leadership in any sort of area, which is based on knowledge that anyway circulates, the best thing you can do is to try to attract all of the people who want to engage in that research to where you are. Maybe they'll even stay. I mean, my thought is that in this modern world, actually the way to be competitive, I think, is actually to be encouraging the development of talent in those kinds of areas among people who are in your country, as well as to attract people who are outside your country to come in and join. And at the same time, I also think it's important to have all of these experts in these areas to communicate and to maybe in some sense form a more collaborative world. This world is not about competition. Even though I happen to be the head of the United States International Mathematical Olympiad team, I don't take this as an objective to just beat all of the other teams. Actually, the United States training program invites students from other countries for free to come and train with us, with the United States. Why? Some people think it's giving away the edge. We're training the best students who will go and then get higher scores than us. But actually, that's not what happened. What ended up happening was when you brought all the best people into one place, everyone in that place got stronger. And actually, the net result was even a good thing. So I think that whenever one tries to control something like basic information, the best thing to do is to take a step back and to think, what can we do to actually try to address the problem on a larger scale? And the answer might actually be to encourage more people, millions of people, to get better at mathematics, to enjoy it, and then to themselves eventually be able to drive the frontier forward.